Hello folks, name's Ricky, aka RickWa, within the fighting game community. This is going to be an advocation video for Autism Awareness / Acceptance Month, along with advocating for neurodiversity and mental health awareness as a whole within the fighting game community. But before I get started with this video, disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional, and I'm only giving my story from my personal experience within my life journey. With that disclaimer out of the way, moving forward. I have posted quite often on social media, specifically Twitter or my Facebook, about being on the spectrum and self-advocating. I've been diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5 years old. And for a lot of people within the fighting game community, I know a lot of y'all are either on the spectrum, are neurodiverse, and or have some sort of mental health diagnosis of sorts. And with this advocation video, basically, I just want you all to know you are not alone within this all, and that your mental health does matter, even for self-advocating as well too. But I'll never make someone advocate if they don't feel comfortable to. That's upon their own comfortability. But at the bare minimum least, for the neurotypical folks that may not know, what is autism? Autism is a neurocognitive / neurological disorder in which can be identified as early as conception. Those who are diagnosed on the spectrum, their symptoms tend to vary. As a result, it is important to understand and empathize that one's autism will be different from the next individual. In my case being, I'm in the level 1 area on the spectrum, which is the little to no needs area of the spectrum. And this is for proper advocation purposes, so then everyone else knows how to properly identify the next individual that's on the spectrum. Level 1 is the little to no needs area of the spectrum. Level 2 is the moderate needs area of the spectrum. And then level 3 is the nonverbal to more needs area of the spectrum. But important thing here is that, with neurodiversity being a part of autism within that mix, there's even been a story about an individual who was nonverbal, but she ended up being valedictorian, and she had a speaking device that had helped her to communicate what she needed to communicate, and she was able to achieve that grand achievement of valedictorian of her class. So that's just an example of something that I wanted to make sure to mention within that, upon that diversity. So, but continuing on, within my experiences of joining the FGC, with the origin of that actually, speaking of which, I joined because, I liked video games growing up a lot, and I remember a friend of mine back in the day, we went to like a Smash Brothers Brawl tournament in like Egg Harbor, New Jersey. That didn't really go well, and so he was just like, you know what, I'm gonna teach you how to play Street Fighter. I was like, word? And this was around like, I'd say 2009? Around that range? Yeah, it was around like 09, like Street Fighter, vanilla Street Fighter 4 was, still a thing at the time before Super Street Fighter 4 got announced. And then within my early days within the fighting game community, it was not the greatest. It was definitely had quite the troubled time dealing with the trolls, the massive amounts of sarcasm and joking, and honestly, being on the spectrum, at least I can say for the downsides of my double-edged sword traits, something that I'll get into a little bit later in this video, upon individuals on the spectrum, having their double-edged sword traits. Yeah, definitely my weaknesses with being on the spectrum was having a very, very troubled time with picking up and quickly understanding sarcasm, dry humor, joking, trolling, and basic forms of social gestures and or cues. And yeah, it was not easy, and it definitely took me a while to at least have a slightly better understanding to where I'm at now, at least. I know even to this day sometimes I have a troubled time picking up on it. But within my experiences, even before the FGC, I heavily, I mean heavily, struggled with massive depression, like basically no levels of self-love, no levels of self-worth, and the lowest self-esteem humanly possible. Like, it was very bad. Within that lack of self-love, self-worth, positive self-esteem, and especially struggling with depression, it was a lot of sadness, despair, and especially a lot of self-harm, mentally, emotionally, and very much so physically, to say the least. And it was like throughout my late 20s that I started doing a lot of growth, especially once I got to the point of achieving my full-blown independence, from moving out of living with my mother to living into my own place where I'm at now, working to save up to eventually get my own car, managing and budgeting my finances to where I'm able to make sure that my bills are all paid on time, and I'm good to go with all that, and even becoming healthier within body, mind, and spirit. Definitely, I do give my thanks and credit to the Autism Waiver program for helping me throughout my time, at least. But, I eventually got to that point throughout mid-2020, right around where fall was about to begin, where I was like, you know what? I can't let this program hold me back from my fullest potential that I see for myself. And, hence I made the moves that I had to make, in the sense of breaking away from those chains and shackles that I felt that held me back from my fullest potential. But I don't discredit the services that I did receive from the Adult Autism Waiver Program. But again, that was just something that I felt was holding me back, and I have absolutely no regrets on removing myself from the waiver program, because I did even more of my own growth and improvements and self-realizations after the fact, going throughout 2021 and even throughout 2022 as well. Thankfully for that. It was not easy upon that. I just, had to give that self-discipline to myself, and, just being kind, gentle, patient, and forgiving with myself, within wanting to see myself become the best version of me that I wanted to be. And obviously within that, I encourage others to do the same for their own self as well too, within that. And there's many people on the spectrum who have achieved a great number of things inside and out of the FGC. I'm actually going to list those examples of those people, and thank you to those who allowed me to give those positive examples. The first person on this list is Psychoblue. He runs the Street Fighter Cross Tekken community to keep it alive. He is also a board-certified behavior analyst using applied behavior analysis to improve the lives of children and teens on the autism spectrum, whether it be more impacted individuals with verbal deficiencies or individuals who exhibit difficulty managing their everyday social, professional, and personal lives compared to neurotypical peers. And definitely shoutouts to Psychoblue for continuously doing the dang thing within that, especially for Street Fighter Cross Tekken as well. The next person on this list is Saya. She received her bachelor's degree in computer graphics and game art. She makes and sells 3D models working under a VR company. Is married to her husband, John, who's also on the autism spectrum, has his master's degree in computer science, and competes in tournaments in the FGC. Shoutouts to both of them. Definitely to Saya as well too, because she's definitely a very cool person. And, especially for all the achievements she's done, props to her. And her husband as well. Let's see, the next person. This one is a non-FGC person. His name is Christian. He didn't let his autism define his destiny when he was dealing with addiction. He overcame and conquered it to become sober and clean. And for some time, he has been an influence and motivational speaker for so many who have been and have gone through addiction. So, yeah, definitely shoutouts to him. I've known him for a while. He's definitely a very cool person and quite the inspiration as well too for overcoming something as, as powerful and dangerous as addiction. So props to him at least for that. And then the last person that I will, give reference to within this, his name is Aaron Jordan. He did game designing for a bit in his life and now has his own comic book series called Wolf's Bane. And also please be sure to check that out as well too, because that's pretty cool that he made a comic book series of his own. So props to him on that. And he's someone that I actually met through the fighting game community, and he allowed me to give his first and last name within that as well too. So just wanted to make sure to mention that. But yeah, I gotta say, just like the one thing I will always encourage people to do is self-advocate only upon their own comfortability. And believe me, I get why one would choose not to self-advocate, and I've been through pretty much all the reasons why one would choose not to self-advocate, and yet I make that willful choice to continue to self-advocate. And you'd still set the boundary of I'm an individual first before my diagnosis, or you can also say just because I let you know of my diagnosis does not mean that's all of who I am. It's a whole lot of like knowing your own self-worth kind of thing, and being able to recognize that something like that, in the sense of your diagnosis is a part of who you are and not letting it define your overall identity. That in and of itself is like one of the biggest signs of self-love, self-worth, and positive self-esteem you can give to yourself, because something like autism is with us all for the rest of our lives when we're diagnosed with something like that. Plain and simple. It's not something you can ever get rid of, nor is it something that you can deny within yourself. It's just simply a part of who you are. Part of why I even made that song called Different Ability, because something like autism you don't have to consider as just a disability, you can consider it like a different ability. So just want to make sure to point that out as well too. But I will say this as well too, as I was mentioning earlier, upon double-edged sword traits, everyone has them. Everyone on the spectrum, or that's neurodiverse and also with a mental health diagnosis, has a set of double-edged sword traits. And I mentioned my weaknesses within my double-edged sword traits. Now my strengths being on the spectrum, I'd have to say would be being very open, honest, extroverted, in the right time and place, and very outgoing and blunt. I will definitely say that. But yeah, and just embracing those positive traits about myself. Oh, right, also being laser focused on something that I'm really attentive to, kind of thing, or that I really want to work on. So that's another positive thing I can put in the sense of positive things within my double-edged sword traits being on the spectrum. I embrace my strengths to shine that much brighter, and I work on my weaknesses to not let those things be as much of a struggle within my day-to-day living and growth and improvement, being an individual on the autism spectrum. And there's a reason why as well that I say an individual on the autism spectrum, because I put my individuality first before my diagnosis, and I feel like that is something that is very important for many of us folks that are diagnosed with something like autism, that are neurodiverse, or have a mental health diagnosis of sorts as well, is that no matter what, you are an individual first before your diagnosis, as your diagnosis does not define who you are. And you have to also understand that your diagnosis, something like autism, again, is with you for the rest of your life. Just, don't let it define your overall identity as your own individual self. And another, something else I will say as well, that I've mentioned quite often for within the fighting game community, is that your mental state of being always affects your physical state of being, and vice versa. That quote is very, very, very prevalent, and especially in tournament play as well. You know, obviously, if you're going through something on like a mental scale of things, you're not going to play at your best, especially if you're playing flustered. And it shows within one's gameplay if they're flustered. You know, mind games are part of the whole game plan, so there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the strategy and psychology within tournament play. But a lot of people don't understand the importance of that concept, of that quote, and that's something that I hope that more people like really understand. Not just within tournament play, but for their own mental health and livelihood as a whole as well, because yeah, it's very important to understand that concept within one's own self. I will say as well, I definitely am very thankful for the closest of friends, and you know, even the good and the regular friends that I have within the fighting game community that I have made, because they have definitely helped me with a great deal of my growth, and also being real with me, and you know, not just catering to my autism, but you know, just being real with me, but also incorporating that little bit of kindness, compassion, patience, and being understanding. And for the neurotypical folks out there as well that may know someone else that's on the spectrum, yeah, it's better that you're honest with them when helping them and or giving them any kind of advice, but also being sure to incorporate just a little bit of that kindness, compassion, patience, and you know, being genuinely understanding towards them within that mix. Because believe me, it goes a very, very long way when you're able to help someone like that, and their gratitude for that will be that much greater. But overall, going forward, I'm at the end point of this advocation video, and I would like to say that I hope that this all helps to inspire other neurodiverse individuals to self-advocate. If they choose not to, it's all good. Once again, that's upon your boundaries and comfortability. But at the least as well, with the showing more compassion, kindness, patience, and being understanding towards one another, you know, from neurodiverse to neurodiverse, and especially the neurotypical to neurodiverse as well too, within that mix inside and out of the FGC. But obviously in this case being, this is targeted towards the fighting game community, since again, as I mentioned earlier, these kinds of topics are not really discussed about enough, and I hope that, you know, it does come more into light and gets brought up more often, because it is important to know that we need to do better in the sense of showing that compassion, kindness, patience, and you know, just being understanding towards one another, because it really does go a long way within doing that, and you know, wanting to help one another grow to become the best version of their own self that they see for their self to be, inside and out of the game. So I will say that at the least. But I hope all of y'all have a wonderful, you know, month of April, as in Autism Acceptance Month or Autism Awareness Month, whichever one you prefer to go by. But remember, folks, the awareness part is the easy part. There's that acceptance that is the next step after that awareness. So remember that, folks. And for the neurodiverse individuals out there as well too, remember, you are an individual first before your diagnosis. Embrace your different ability. That's what I at least said in my song Different Ability. But peace out, folks.
Authentic, unique technique, individually self-made. My accomplishments are my own accolade. Be the best version of you that you see yourself to be. Endless possibilities are seen within neurodiversity. I embrace what I have as a different ability. You're an individual first before your diagnosis. Embrace your different ability. It is with you for the rest of your life. You'll thank yourself later on.